Hi, and welcome to Rich in Relationship, the podcast that's focused on family relationships. And today I'm interviewing actually someone who's become a dear friend and is a fellow Toastmaster, Natasha. I want to call her Natalia. Natasha Bazilevych. It's always good when you muck up your friends' names, right? Natasha is not only an outstanding human being, but she's a public speaking coach. She teaches presentation skills and has been doing that for 14 years with people from countries all over the world. How are you, Natasha?
Yes, I'm awesome. Thank you, Rich. Yeah, Natalia is my full name, just in my passport. My friends call me
I
Natasha.
bumbled into that.
Yes, Natalia, it is my full name. But Natasha is for everybody else, for friends, for short. But recently I started to have people call me Nat. And I don't know if you know
That's
why.
a little masculine.
Is it? Well, you know what? It's because I love Avengers. I mean, I love Marvel. I love all the
Ah,
superhero stuff. And Nat, the Black Widow
yeah.
there, Romanoff. So when I remember just, Captain America calling her Nat, and I'm like, oh yeah,
So you identify with the Black Widow. Okay.
yeah, yeah, a
Interesting.
little bit.
So, Natasha, Nat,
Yeah.
the question I ask everyone on the front end is how did your heart lead you into this work of being a public speaking coach, of teaching presentation skills?
Well, that happened a long time ago, and I remember the moment when it all started, I would say, because I was asked to speak on behalf of other students at my graduation and in high school. And
Mhm.
the teachers were there, the parents and the students. And of course, it was scary. But then I went up there to this stage and I was looking at all of those people. And the moment that I experienced it, it was just like I could feel it in my body that I look into their eyes, I say things, and it sparks some kind of emotion in there, like joy, and they're smiling, and I could feel the power. So I honestly will tell you, it was just this emotion, this feeling of the power of impacting people, their emotions. You could make them happy, you could make them laugh, you could make them inspired, and that's when I thought I need to do something about this. I wanted to, and all my life after that was teaching. Then I got into training, then I got into speaking. And now for the last 14 years, I've been teaching presentation skills. So coaching other people in public speaking. And it's been such a passion for me. I love it so much. And when I can pass this love to other people, for me, it's like a drug. When you should see me get so excited when I train, when I coach
I
with
do
my
see you get so
clients.
excited. You're so excited right now.
Yes,
Are you even more excited?
I can get more excited. It's because I talk about public speaking. See, whenever I talk about this, like my clients yesterday had a corporate training, and a few clients, they said, whenever you talk about your work, your eyes just lighten up. And yeah, of course.
Super cool.
So yes.
Super cool. Well, it's funny. So for the listeners, when Natasha, Natalia, and I first talked about, I was like, I got to have Natasha on the show, and I'm trying to think, how do we relate public speaking to families? And I've really, we've been talking about it and digesting it, and one of the most recent shows we did was all about infidelity and how infidelity occurs in 80% of all marriages. I mean, it's really an astonishing figure when you look at it. And it happens in happy marriages. It's not like you don't have to be unhappy. And infidelity doesn't necessarily happen because people aren't having intimate relations with each other. So sometimes it happens. So the bottom line is that what's under all that is there's a breakdown in communication of some kind within the relationship. And so I started thinking about 80% of marriages have infidelity, 76% of all people are afraid of public speaking. Like, why is that so close? And I think there's a connection between this inability to communicate in our really intimate relationships and the inability or the fear of communicating in public. There's some kind of relationship there. So Natasha, I'm wondering what you think about that.
That's a very interesting observation. I haven't really thought about this. And numbers are so close. Well, first of all, you really shocked me by this number of 80%.
Yeah, it shocked me
That,
when I found it out. I was like, really?
Rich, I mean, for your listeners, I'm not married, but now I'm a little scared to to even get into this. I mean, of course I've had relationships in my family and with a lot of people, so I understand. If we think about the correlation, the connection between this, for me, it goes back to speaking up
Hmm.
and self-awareness. As a public speaker, the first thing that we need to work on is mindset and knowing yourself, your self-awareness, and building that confidence, that the strong personality. And then when you are in marriage, when you are building your relationships, you've got to know yourself really well, so that then you could know your spouse well, and that would give you confidence, that would give you more poise and understanding what you want to say, and then you would speak up. So basically you would not just hold it back. I see a lot of families don't communicate with each other because they don't have this security, like
Yeah.
they're insecure. And this insecurity comes from lack of self-awareness, I think, and lack of confidence, lack of this inner drive and inner core. And in both public speaking and relationships and any communication, that's what we need to work on. We need to understand who we are, believe in ourselves, believe in the goal. So if people believe in their marriage, then they will work on this and they will speak up, they will share their mind. Oh, when people don't talk, then everything falls apart.
Yeah, so a lot of the couple, actually all of the couples that I work with high conflict, people in high conflict. All the couples that I work with have really one way of communicating, and that's right. Like that's all they have left, and they're actually often they're afraid to communicate because they don't want to have that kind of communication. So the communication is on really extreme. It's either not at all or very loud. They may go through periods where it's cordial, sort of business communication, but that's not the same. Like public speaking is not doing business. Doing business is, okay, the kids need to be picked up, someone needs to get food, the dogs need to be walked. That's not necessarily what we're talking about here. And so, as I inferred, Natasha and I met in a Toastmasters group. Toastmasters is an international public speaking club where you can practice speaking publicly. And some of the skills that we learn in Toastmasters, I think, actually relate very directly to having meaningful conversations, not business conversations, not explosive conversations or lack of communication with other people. And that would include the people that you live with. And though I know a little about this, Natasha, you're really the expert. I'd love to know more about when we're going to address someone and we really want to be heard. What are the qualities that we need to grow in ourselves in order to do that?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, like I already said, is self-awareness. So understanding who you are and this also goes back to emotional intelligence.
So
Because
let's talk a little bit about self-awareness.
yeah, because self-awareness is one part, is 1/4 of emotional intelligence, and you need to develop that. So self-awareness, you've got to understand your strengths. You need to know what you are good at. You need to know what you've achieved, so that builds your confidence. You need to understand your needs and your interests. And then as soon as you are confident in this, then you can communicate it to another person. But then
Mhm.
also, if we step away from us and think about what makes public speaking effective, what makes every communication effective, and then as a result, relationship effective, it's shifting your focus to another person. Because yes, first of all, we've got to be self-aware. So we need to know, I need to know my own needs. Because if I only
Mhm.
serve the needs of another person and I forget myself, eventually they will just come out and I'll explode. And because they are still there, I still
Well,
have
the
my needs.
communication comes out in a way that the other person may have trouble receiving.
Yeah.
Like if it's a public speaker, there are very few public speakers who get up there and do angry speeches and are successful. Adolf Hitler was very successful at that, but the people have to be receptive to that energy. And probably in a married relationship, we're hoping that the other person's less receptive to that energy.
Yeah, you mean like the audience or our
Yes.
another person? Yeah, they're less receptive.
So
So
we need to be aware of the other person. And
yeah.
actually, I'm super interested in as you're talking, I'm thinking about self-awareness, and I'm thinking about there's like an intuition, when we speak in public, even on Zoom, there is sort
Mm-hmm.
of an intuitive, there's our unconscious mind is gauging the other person's reaction. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to hear more about what's that connection to your sort of unconscious mind or your intuition, and how do you connect that with the other person?
Mm-hmm. Well, I try to develop my skills of reading people
Mhm.
or of basically reading body language. And maybe you've heard of Joe Navarro. Have you heard of Joe Navarro?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I just bought his book and I want to read his second book too. It's about body language. It's how to read, how to understand. For the listeners, it's the FBI expert on spies and body language. So he was interrogating a lot of, or just questioning a lot of spies, and he understands how to read people's body language and all those cues, and he wrote several books on that. I mean, he's retired right now, so he teaches on this, and I watched several of his videos, so I was inspired, and I've been learning a lot on this. That's why even on Zoom, when I train people or when I just have meetings or we have our even Toastmasters club, I read people's reactions.
Mhm.
And like I said, after we are self-aware, after we understand ourselves, then we shift focus on another person, and then our communication should be focused on them. We should try to meet their needs. We should try to help them achieve their goal. But for that, we need to know it. So it should be the awareness of another person. And you might learn those needs beforehand, or like you're saying, you would be reading those cues during the conversation, during the communication. And that's where all these little moments, these movements of lips or of nose, you read the emotion on the face of a person.
Mhm.
And for me, I think I've got not great maybe, but pretty good at reading this and then changing, modifying my speech according to what I see on a
Mhm.
person's face or their body.
Mhm. So there's something that we want to communicate to the other person, and we know what it is, we know where it is we want to get with them, and I think all couples understand this. There's an agenda of some kind,
Mhm.
and so we're modifying the communication so that we can speak it in a way that they can receive it. So if we're talking to them and they start to go, oh, or maybe they're looking off, or maybe their arms crossed, we know that we're not having the kind of connection we want to have with them.
Exactly. Well, it's important to also know that specific person. And if we talk about marriages, then hopefully the married couple, they've lived for some time, they know and understand each other.
Well,
Because, like, for
actually,
example,
very often married couples, especially if they're in conflict, they're very focused on their own agenda, but less focused on can the other person receive it. So that's one of the things I love about what you're talking about here is in the work that I do with couples, it's very much about developing, reestablishing empathy.
yeah,
The marriage
yeah.
started out with empathy and compassion, but
Mm-hmm,
somehow through conflict, they've withdrawn and the trust levels are low. So this
mm-hmm,
piece of, if you really want the other person to hear you, you need to pay attention to them instead of
mm-hmm,
talking to them like this. Well, you didn't wash the dishes, and that really pisses me off, right? That's
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
ineffective communication. So what you're
Yeah.
talking about, where you're paying attention to, is the other person receiving it? And how are they receiving it? Super, super important.
Yeah, but also we need to keep in mind who they are as a personality.
Mm.
And if we didn't know them beforehand, we'll then learn. That's why I said hopefully it's a marriage couple, so that's why they know. Why I'm saying this is because different cues, like even for example, have your arms crossed, like what you showed before. This could be read differently, and mostly the common interpretation is that the person is closed and covering themselves, and they don't want to talk
It's
to
a
me.
defensive posture. Yeah.
Yeah, defensive. But then it's like, by the way, that Joe Navarro, he was talking about this also, is that this is a protective posture. The defensive, yes, but it just like soothing. He calls it
Yeah.
soothing.
Covering
That
your vital organs, hugging yourself.
yeah, yeah. So it doesn't really mean that they are hostile. It means that they need to soothe themselves, like they want to protect themselves because they're worried about something, they're in pain, they're hurting. That's why for us, like if it's for me, for example, I have the goal to resolve the conflict and I want to have good relationship with my spouse, then I will open up and I will have the tone of voice, I will have the questions, and I will have the communication in such a way that that person will open and get out of that posture, so that they would feel protected and they would feel safe with me. That would be my goal, and I would think of how I can help them actually be more receptive in this situation.
Yeah. Now, for some couples, the problem is that one person is very vocal and the other person is afraid to speak. And one of the things I
Hmm.
love about public speaking is one of the things we learn in public speaking, I'm sure you teach this, is how to speak out even if the audience doesn't appear receptive. Right? Like
Yes.
some, like I've noticed in our Toastmasters group, there's in the education pathways, the education piece. There's actually a speech where you give a speech to a hostile audience. They're like hecklers, and people in the audience take on heckler roles, right? And so the idea is how do you manage a hostile audience, and will you complete the speech regardless of what's going on in the room, which I think actually has a lot of application to
Hmm.
marriage also.
Yeah, yes. It's a really interesting experience when you have somebody hostile, and it makes us we need to stay calm, we need to not respond to something super negative. We need to have wisdom and empathy, and really feel sensitivity to how to respond to this, and all the situations are absolutely individual, and I think in marriage it's the same. Like, you have to sense it.
So when you are working with people, how do you encourage them to deal with, let's say there's somebody in the audience who's a heckler or a hostile or whatever, how do you encourage them to handle that?
Mhm. Well, in public speaking, it's a little different, because when you present to the audience and there are more than one person, then we can't spend too much time responding to this one person and then ignoring everybody else. That's why I always say you respond to this person and tell them, well, let's talk after the after the presentation. We can discuss this so that everybody else gets your attention too, because sometimes they could completely hog you and also spoil people's experience
So
by
what I'm hearing you say is you acknowledge them without engaging.
yes, yes. So you don't engage with that negativity, you don't respond to negativity. If they are negative, you could say, thank you for that is your opinion, I respect your opinion very much, can please let's talk after the presentation and I will share some of my thoughts with you. And so just not respond to it, because this could create back and forth, back and forth.
And I think this is actually, that has even on a one-to-one basis has application for people who experience the other person as being domineering and interrupting a lot. If you took this same idea and said to them,
Hmm.
you know what, that's super important, and I really want to talk about that, but I really need to, I really need to express this. I need to express the
Yeah.
whole idea first, and then we can talk about that later. I think it actually has application in one-to-one communications. I think very often what happens with the couples that I'm working with is one person's trying to communicate an authentic need. The other person perceives it as an attack of some
Yeah.
kind. And so they become the heckler. And if the person who has the authentic need can stay focused on, I really need to express this for myself, no matter how
Hmm.
they receive it. Now, and
Hmm.
take that
Hmm.
tool that you're using with your people in public speaking and say,
Hmm.
yeah, you know what? I really hear that concern. And can I just finish this so we can I'll talk to you afterwards. Or when I
Yeah.
finish this idea, we can talk about it some more. I think that gives you the ability to have the experience of speaking your mind, even if you don't feel completely heard.
Yeah, just sharing it could be powerful.
It
But
is.
also,
It is
yeah,
often for the person who does not get to express themselves. Often, just saying it, even if it's not well received, is a victory.
And you know what's also really important? Well, I kind of said that at the beginning, but understanding the person, understanding the audience, we always speak about this, but also in marriages, why are they this way? Why was he negative or she negative why are they hostile when they respond to this? There should be a reason behind it. And it's good, yes, that I want to express myself and I need to say it right now, but well, why are they responding this way? Maybe if I understand it, then we can get to the bottom of this. I mean, you as a coach, you probably help them with that. And when both
I hope
people
so.
yeah, when both people understand each other, then the conflict is resolved. But usually that happens when everybody is thinking about their own needs and not about the needs of another person.
Yeah.
Is that
So,
right?
yeah, I'm loving this. I'm loving the parallels between public speaking and communicating on a very intimate level. And I think there's a reason for that.
Mm-hmm.
I think I want to, I think what I just want to say to the audience in general is, so if you feel like you're having trouble expressing your ideas in any venue, it's worth it to explore public speaking. I actually have a client right now who 6 years ago left the man she had a child with. They weren't married. And it is and was a very abusive relationship. And she is actually a very effective corporate personality. So in the corporate environment, she feels empowered and expresses herself and deflects abuse very easily. But that's something she's worked up to in the 6 years since she left this guy. And now what she's coming for help with is how do she sees it. She sees the disparity. Like, she stands for herself in the corporate environment, but not when it comes to herself. With her child, yes, but not herself. And so what she's come to work on is, how do I take those skills and transfer them to my personal life? And so I would encourage listeners to think about, if you're having problems communicating in your marriage, any kind of problems communicating in your marriage, you may want to think about first practicing in the public sphere, like through public speaking, through a coach or a Toastmasters group, because the lessons that you're going to learn there are transferable. How we do one thing is how we do everything, is what coaches like to say. So that said, Natasha, how can people find you?
People can find me on social media, of course, Instagram and Facebook, but I would say just get on my website. It's natashabazilevych.com. And that's Natasha is easy, but Bazilevych is like Basil with a Z, and then just IVYCH. ELIVYCH. But I think that there will be the link, right? So if people get to my website, you can download.
Hang on, hold it. So I want to be clear. It's NATASHABAZILEVYCH.com.
Yes, absolutely.
And when they get there, what can they do?
They can download the free video course, free public speaking video course. And that's my jam. And you can also join my group there. Everything is there. You get on my page there, you will see there's a free Facebook group, the community where people hang out and learn, and definitely get to our Toastmasters club. We'll be happy. Both Rich and I will be happy to see you there.
So we're going to do a pitch for Toastmasters. So there's the Lexington Toastmasters group in New York City. Just, if you Google it, I'm sure it comes right up. And I just want to make a personal pitch here. As preparing for this podcast interview, I've been a Toastmaster for a year and a half, almost 2 years. And I've been thinking about actually how working on my and I've had some private public speaking coaching as well. And I've been thinking about how it's influenced the way I speak in my marriage. And actually there is a direct correlation between the fear of public speaking going down and the willingness to speak about my own feelings going up. And this thing of my wife is a classic heckler, by the way. She's an attorney. She doesn't heckle. She's an attorney. And as an attorney, she's always dragging what we call a red herring out. I'll be talking about one thing and she'll say, well, what about blah, 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 blah? And I have exactly used this technique that we were talking about. I said, you know what? I appreciate that blah, 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 blah is really important. Can I just please get to be complete with this? And then we'll come back to blah, 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 blah. Whereas in the past, I would go, blah, 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 blah. Well, let me tell you about and I would lose the whole thread of what I was trying to say. So there are direct correlations and applications to public speaking and communication in a committed relationship, let's call it.
Yeah, it's a skill. It's a skill. Public speaking, communication, relationship. You can develop this. We learn how to build relationships. It's not just something you're born with.
I'm going to be really worried if on your website you develop a whole relationship coaching, so public speaking and relationship coaching. I'd be really, maybe I promise you, I won't develop a public speaking practice in my relationships, but I will encourage people to come see you if they're having trouble expressing themselves, because I actually authentically believe that there is a very intimate connection between the two.
Yes.
Natasha, the question, I can't believe how fast the time has gone.
I know, me
right?
too.
It goes very quickly. The question I ask everyone at the end of the podcast is, what is the legacy you want to leave behind?
Oh, that's super easy. I'm starting to leave this legacy tomorrow. Tomorrow, I am starting to write my book. And
Woohoo!
this happened. Yes, it's a big deal for me because I had that dream for a long time, maybe since I was a child. I was writing stories and things when I studying when I was 10. But then a year ago, my coach asked me a question. If you had to live like 1 year or several months, what would you do? And that's when I thought, well, I would just finally write my book. And that's when I made a plan because I knew I couldn't start it till now. And now I'm starting. It was at like July 2021 was a very clear plan. And that's what I'm leaving behind. It's going to be about me. It's going to be about public speaking and how running marathons are connected with public speaking and how people can become great people who speak with power.
Maybe I need to interview a marathon coach next. Actually, you could seriously argue that training for a marathon is like preparing for a lifetime marital commitment. It's
Oh,
actually
yeah.
a super interesting idea.
Hmm,
And
hmm.
maybe you come back next week and talk about marathons.
Yes. Or some other time. Yeah, marathons are amazing too. Great connection with
We didn't even get to
relationships with.
talk about marathon running. I didn't. I had forgotten that you do that.
Yeah, I ran 6 marathons. So that's
Woo!
why I'm connecting marathon running with public speaking and sharing how everybody, well, mostly I work with entrepreneurs, but of course anybody can get a book. And that's how you can speak with power in
Yeah.
relationships, in public. Yep.
So typically, you just for the audience, typically you work with entrepreneurs. What size? Where are they in their process?
Well, I also do corporate training, so I work with executives and entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs, mostly coaches and course creators, who want to market, who already have their business and they want to market it through public speaking on
Mhm.
digital or physical stages. Share when maybe they have a book and they want to speak, and I help them with that.
Terrific. Well, I know a lot of people like that.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, and
Thank you.
such a pleasure talking to you as always.
Thank you, Rach. Absolute pleasure.